All right, I think we're ready to go. Well, hello everybody out there on the internet. Hi everybody, it's Maya Smith from Born This Way Foundation. Thank you so much for joining. We are so excited for the latest kindness talk, and I'm so excited for some of my friends to do it. I also know that I in terms of my strength right now, but I really want you to see my shirt. My shirt says I'm a voter, and that is the theme of today's conversation. Thank you everyone for joining. I just want to ground this conversation and this kindness talk in the moment. You know, we continue to face uncertainty and global challenges, and we are responding globally with kindness, with community, with compassion. We are in the last week of Born This Way Foundation's Be Kind 21 campaign, and we're so grateful to have the folks in boxes here as partners. Be Kind 21 is an invitation to think about kindness to yourself and to your community, and so far more than 5.2 million people have pledged more than 110 million unique acts of kindness. And one of the most incredible intersections of kindness and using your voice is that of civic engagement and service. And that's what we're going to talk about today with some incredible friends and organizations. So thank you, Andy, Chia, and Mike, for joining the conversation. It's so great to see all of you. And though I know all of you and your incredible organizations, some of you I've known for decades, and we can get into that. But I'd love for you to introduce yourselves and the organizations that you work with. Chia, I'd love for you to go first.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Chia, and my preferred gender pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a Boston native and a senior at Harvard studying human developmental and regenerative bio. But most importantly, I'm an intern at Black Girls Vote, which is an organization that is dedicated to empowering and encouraging women, especially women of color, to engage in the political process to improve their lives, but also the lives of their communities. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for being here. And Mike Minks from Youth Service America, please introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. As Maya said, I'm Mike Minks, and I have been here at Youth Service America coming up on 13 years next week. I started heading into the 08 election cycle, so fall of 07, which is where I first met Maya as we were working on that election cycle. And YSA really focuses on increasing youth participation in volunteering and service, in voting and civic engagement, and in joining and leadership development opportunities. And most relevant to this season, our Service Vote campaign, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Awesome. And for any young people that are looking for a job, for an internship opportunity, funding for their project, YSA puts together an incredible briefing. So please do follow them online and sign up for the YSA briefing. Andy from Headcount, please share an introduction and the incredible work that you do. Oh, Andy, I think you're muted.
That's important. Who does that like 5 times a day? I definitely do. Well, nice to be here, Maya. Great to you and great to meet you, Chia and Mike. I'm Andy Bernstein. I'm the founder and executive director of Headcount. We're an organization that's been around since 2004 doing voter registration and get out the vote work, largely in the music and culture space. And we're excited to be working with you guys. Black Girls Vote, we've been working with a little bit in Detroit in particular. And the Born This Way Foundation we're partnering with as well. So it's really exciting to be with like.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andy, for being here. And just a fun side note, I think a lot of the foundation community knows that I actually started my career in civic engagement with an organization called Rock the Vote. And so this topic and this conversation is near and dear to my heart. We want to make this, as always, as interactive of a conversation as possible. So I have the comments streaming next to me. Please ask a question and make a comment. We actually have some of the best and brightest voting minds here in these squares. So if you need information about how to access an absentee ballot, if you need voter registration information, please feel free to ask a question. We'll make sure that you get those answers. But let's get into it, and please submit your questions. Our team is collecting them. So Mike, I'm going to start with you. So we mentioned this, we'll say it a million times in this conversation, but voting, if you're able to, is remarkably important. But kindness to our communities, to our loved ones, to our neighbors, to our shared spaces, our environment is also something that makes all the difference. So in the face of the global crises and challenges that we're facing today, how can people remain civically involved and engaged?
Sure. Well, here at YSA, we often talk about youth leading ASAP. And that has a double meaning. And obviously ASAP, that we want young people leading right now as soon as possible. But we also use that to describe forms of participation that young people can do. So the ASAP stands for awareness, for public education campaigns, service and direct volunteering, advocacy and engaging in the policy process, and then philanthropy of raising and donating financial resources. And while we've certainly seen the specifics of what those forms of participation looks like be a little bit different in the midst of a pandemic and all of the other crises that we have going on, we think those are still the four core strategies that young people use to solve problems, and kind of whatever combinations of those works for you and you want to adapt in your community. We have tons of ideas and resources around, and there's no shortage of them. As you mentioned, we put out our weekly youth service briefing that we try to compile everything from our partners and going on in the field. And so there is, absolutely no shortage around days of service that are coming up. We just wrapped up 9/11 Day of Service last week, where we saw thousands and thousands of young people volunteering. MLK Day of Service is coming up in January, and then of course Global Youth Service Day, our annual event in April. Our service vote campaign, and we've put together 50 different ideas for that are all of the kind of best of resources in the field, including I think everyone on the call, on ysa.org/vote, that folks can pick any combination of those in the last 47 days. Until the election. And we have tons of other ideas on our website. If you go to ysa.org/ideas, ysa.org/COVID has COVID response specific strategies that folks can use. We have grant programs that are available throughout the year for folks. The next ones coming up will be our after school grants. If any after school programs are interested in adding this work to their programs, that'll come open in October around Lights On After School Day. And then we'll do our annual Sodexo Stop Hunger Foundation grants later in the year as well. And those are if anyone's tackling the issue of hunger. And then lots of other tons of resources and training available on our website as well to help you plan and put together great projects. So, we, again, the specifics might look a little bit different as folks are going mostly virtual, but the strategies and all of the ideas and resources we think are the same as they've always been.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for reminding us that while so much has changed, the opportunity to give back and be kind and serve our communities is still absolutely there and maybe even more important than ever. So thank you for that reminder. Chia, I would love to talk to you about voting as an act of kindness. So as I mentioned before, we're in the midst of our Be Kind 21 campaign. And for those who have not signed up, you can still sign up at bornthisway.foundation/BeKind21. And we're so proud to have Black Girls Vote as a partner because we believe, and as you believe, voting is a powerful act of kindness and your voice matters. So how do you at Black Girls Vote view voting as an act of kindness in the community or the collective?
Yeah, so to understand kindness, it might be helpful to look at histories of unkindness, whether that be slavery or when women could not vote, or, the alleged forced sterilization of women of color at ICE detention centers. In cases of unkindness, the voices of those who are affected are largely drowned out, and there's a lack of equity, and there's also a lack of access to resources. Voting as an act of kindness really is to remedy this. And for me, as a Black woman, voting as an act of kindness really is a matter of, expressing rights and expressing privileges that once were not allowed. Voting is an opportunity to highlight voices that, were drowned out, such as the ones that I highlighted earlier. And kindness in voting is an opportunity for you to look to your neighbors and see how they're struggling, to see the things that they care about, and also to celebrate their humanity. And in celebrating their humanity, you're voting on issues that matter to you, but you're also voting on issues that are crucial to them.
Thank you, Chia. I absolutely agree. And Andy, so research, which we are all very, very familiar with the research right now, but research shows that young people are fiercely engaged, reporting high levels of attendance at virtual and in-person actions for causes and candidates that they believe in. But research also shows that the issue isn't getting young people excited about voting, but really how to vote. Can you share the many ways young people can register to vote and make their voices heard through voting? And then I have a follow-up question about all of that in this moment. But let's start with how young people can get involved.
Sure. Well, registering to vote is really easy. It takes about 2 minutes. And what a lot of people don't know, and we just saw these studies that showed this, was that people don't know you can do it online. And voting was actually one of the last things to go online. And there are still a handful of states where you actually have to print out a form and sign it and mail it. The good news is that's the extreme minority. And most Americans have access to vote online. You can go to headcount.org. Not only can you register to vote there, but you can also check your registration status, which is something that every American should do in advance of the voter registration deadlines. The deadlines to register to vote are just in a couple weeks in some states. So that takes like about 30 seconds, and you can do that on our website as well. And, there are 16 million names that got taken off the voter rolls in the last 2 years, some for very legitimate reasons, some for not so legitimate reasons. So it's very important to check your voter registration status, especially if you're a new voter or didn't vote in the last 2 elections, because that's how you can get purged from the voter rolls. So I think that, it's sort of a balance of when we message about these things, we don't want to scare people off. It really isn't that hard. There are barriers to voting. But the number one reason that people don't vote is because they say they don't want to, because they're turned off by the system, they're turned off by the candidates, they don't know the candidates. So I think we always have a sort of two-pronged piece of work to do. One is we need to make it easy and not intimidating and all these things. But we also have to find a way to make our culture one that is celebrating participation, where people feel more wanting to opt in than opt out. And some of that's on us, some of that is on the candidates, some of that is on the individual. And it gets back to kindness. I mean, a random act of kindness is all about doing something that's not necessarily for yourself. And when it comes to voting, unless an election is going to be decided by one vote, which happened in Virginia very recently, the entire state house, the control of the state house came down to one individual voter's vote. But that doesn't happen a lot. So when you think about voting, you have to think about the power of the collective. It's like maybe your individual vote isn't going to be the difference, but if everyone like you thinks that way, and everyone who's not like you goes out and votes, well, you're going to have elected officials who are very much unlike you. So it is this act of kindness of saying, hey, I'm going to work collectively with people I don't even know. We're all going to do our little part. And if we do our little part, then our voice will be heard. And that's where really the values come in, and the value of participation is it's not just about yourself and what's in your interest, it's about the collective interest.
Absolutely. And I love the definition you gave of kindness. At the foundation, we define kindness as an act in service to someone else without the expectation of anything in return. And I'd never thought of that as a definition of voting, right? An act in service to the collective. So that's really, really beautiful. Thank you. And can we talk about what's changed? I mean, you and I, 20 years ago, registering voters at concerts, right? When that seems like a little bit of a thing of the past, these huge mass gatherings where we just offer people tables with iPads that register to vote, though I'm confident they'll be back. How has Headcount's work pivoted to continue to reach out to young people without that physical congregation convening piece?
Well, it's pivoted in a big way. We went full virtual pretty much on March 11th. And there were a few things we've done that are really exciting. I want to say we're going to register more voters this year than we ever have before. So the pivot worked. And some of the things we did is we worked with a lot of musicians, a lot of partners to create fun little campaigns where people, by checking their voter registration status, could get entered to win a a Zoom chat with Camila Cabello or Dave Matthews, or get to see a private concert with Nicky Jams. And this has really worked well. And what we find is when just asking people to check their voter registration status, well, usually anywhere from 5% to 50% of people are going to actually register there because they're going to see that they're not registered. So that we've done about 60 of these, and that's really piled up. We're also working with a lot of festivals, so we're giving away tickets, including Water down in Virginia. Pharrell's Festival is one that comes to mind that we're really excited to be working with. And we have a lot of new partners. We partnered with Spotify, with Global Citizen. So it was one of those things where it's like, I mean, I remember a meeting in late March where we're like, oh my God, everything we planned this year has gone away. It just all went away. And we've been working on some of this stuff for a couple of years. And what are you going to do? Are you going to sulk, or are you going to say, okay, well, what is our situation now? And honestly, I think this has been our best year ever, our most high impact year. One of the things we're doing is peer-to-peer texting. So you can't volunteer at concerts now, unfortunately, but we have a lot of other volunteer opportunities. You can sign up to do texting, where you're texting people, other prospective voters, and giving them the information they need to help them vote. And we're also doing a lot of community events. We're out there at food pantries, at employment centers, at places that are still essential in a pandemic, and we're there helping people register to vote who need those services most. Mm-hmm. So I encourage anybody to check out headcount.org, where you scroll down to the bottom of our homepage, you'll see a lot of volunteer opportunities. And the texting has been really fun too.
Yeah, that's awesome. We would love for our team to drop the link to check your voter registration. And just while you're here on the chat watching us, please take a moment and check your voter registration status. So Chia, I want to ask you the same question. I know the last election in Baltimore was filled with parties and fun and celebration and community, and that's part of the incredible magic that you've created there. Can you tell us how your work at Black Rose Vote has pivoted because of the pandemic, the dual pandemics?
Yeah, so usually Black Rose Vote, along with Baltimore Vote, we have a campaign called Party at the Polls. And usually, at the polls, you would host a party to celebrate the election, a successful election, because we do understand that it's important to create a celebratory atmosphere around this. Like casting your vote, voicing your voice is really important and something to celebrate. However, with the pandemic, we did have to pivot, we did have to change. So we changed it to Party at the Mailbox, because everyone was casting their ballots from the mailbox. This was a campaign that meant that we were sending out to 2,000 boxes across Baltimore to basically encourage people to be civically engaged, to get out their vote, and to be excited about the primary elections that happened, especially because we're living in a very somber time. But essentially after that, we hosted a online live Zoom party that had a lot of officials from Baltimore, also DJs from Baltimore, lots of people that people really look up to, such as Reverend Jesse Jackson, and it was a really happy event. People came together during a time that you really would not expect anyone to be happy during, and we're looking to expand that to other cities such as Detroit, such as Philly.
I love that. And I have seen the pictures, and you guys were so successful in still being able to create community and excitement. And I'm certain you'll do it again in November. So thank you for that pivot and being so responsive. Mike, you talked a little bit about how YSA pivoted to meet this moment. So I want to start with another round of questions, and I'll start with you, Mike. So I'd love your thoughts on how we can be there for one another, whether it's talking through the issues that mean most to us, or even taking a break from it all to ensure that we're able to refocus and be ready for the weeks ahead leading into the election and beyond. This is an overwhelming time where traditional boundaries between work and life and friends and school and parenting and being a human being, I'm very reflective of my own experience. That's just what I'm deeply feeling right now. But these boundaries are gone. So how do we have conversations, and how do we turn it off when we need to? Any advice? I know you've been doing this work for a very long time.
Sure. It's a great question, Maya. One of the big pieces that we often talk about in young people planning service projects or any form of activities is how they can use their sparks. And Sparks is a youth development concept that originates out of the Search Institute in Minnesota and has become a kind of a core principle in the youth development space. And the idea is that all young people and all of us, just as any age people, have those things that really get us up in the morning. There are passions, our interests, the thing that kind of lights the fire or sparks the fire in our hearts, which is where the name comes from. And we've always really challenged young people to kind of use those sparks in their service, because we think that'll make for a much more meaningful experience. And I think as we're all kind of adapting, that concept is more important than ever. And one of the key factors is that you have a spark champion. So that's a role that really adults can play. And unfortunately, something like only like a third of young people feel like they have an adult in their life who knows what their sparks are and looks out for opportunities and kind of coaches and guides them along the way in kind of developing and using those sparks in their life. So I think, as people are kind of disconnected from the communities that they're usually in, the more that we can play that role, for the young people in our lives and just for each other. I think much like a lot of youth development concepts, it applies to all humans. I would certainly love a spark champion of my own that can watch out for that kind of stuff. So I think that's one place to start.
That's awesome. I reluctantly am very much an adult, and I'm happy to be a Spark champion on YSA. I would be honored to do that. I also just want to flag an important statistic that you reminded me of. So at Born This Way Foundation, we focus on building a kinder and braver world. We think mental health and kindness are inextricably linked. And if you look at the CDC numbers around suicide, more than 25.4% of young people ages 18 to 24 their lives in June. And so when we look at the protective factors against suicide, having one other person who is invested in, supportive of, and connected to you makes a real big difference. So the sparks and those connections that you're building, not only do they matter for service and community building, they actually matter more than ever in mental health right now. So thank you for that work that you're doing to create sparks. Andy, I'm going to ask the same question, except we're going to take it a little bit in a different twist. So being there for each other and having hard conversations. One of the statistics that comes up time and time again in our youth voting work that we've been doing for decades together is that young people need an invitation to participate, right? One of the infuriating poll measures, I think it was in 2004 or 2008, was that nobody had asked them to vote, right? So how do we create invitations? How do we have constructive conversations in these polarized times that invite people to vote, right? We have all of these incredible, I voted, I'm voting, Instagram filters and stickers and all of these things. But when we break it down to the human to human connection, how do we have conversations in a constructive way that invite people to participate in our electoral process if they're able?
Maya, it's so funny that you're asking that, because literally right before I got on here, that's what I was working on. We're actually rolling out a website called So Your Friends Aren't Voting. And it's about having the difficult conversation with friends who might not vote. And the first thing we say is that taking a tone of non-judgmental approach. Listen, it's if you feel strongly about something, you can have the tendency to be scolding or things like that, and nobody reacts well to that. And people have reasons for not voting. The Knight Foundation did a study called the 100 Million Study about the 100 million non-voters. And they found specific themes. It was people who don't like the candidates, people who feel the system is rigged, or some people just don't care. Some people think they're too busy. But there were themes. And when you can understand the themes and not invalidate them, but try to really more kind of invite people and give people good reasons to participate, that's what we feel is very important. And studies show that friends and family have more impact on people's voting than any celebrity, any organization. We do our best, but we do our best work when we're encouraging individuals to encourage their friends and circles. And there's a big thing now in the voter movement called vote tripling, and it's all about getting everybody to get 3 friends to vote. So we're going to roll out that website hopefully tomorrow. And it's such an important question because the conversations, and I'm going to guess most people who watch this are voters. I'm just going to guess that if you're interested and you're going to sit here on a Thursday evening and watch this, you're a voter. But you almost definitely know people who are not a voter. Just statistically, I mean, it's about half of young Americans don't vote. So you probably know people who don't vote. And if you make it your mission to get 3 people out to vote, and everybody else makes it their mission to get 3 people out to vote, that's how we really change things. But it has to be a respectful conversation. You have to be able to listen, because changing minds doesn't happen just by aggression. It happens by real, authentic conversation.
That's an important reminder, and I hope that you guys, the 3 of you, will commit to being my vote tripling people. So I've tripled my vote. Thank you for that work, Andy, and for keeping it positive. I think that's a really important message. So Chia, would love your thoughts on that, and how, especially since Black Girls Vote, the part of the magic of your work is just so hyper local, right? So I just, on a personal anecdote, a couple years ago, my husband ran for city council in our town, right? And everyone had something to say to me at the supermarket, at coffee, at school drop off, right? So when you work in these hyper local community building ways, that respectful dialogue becomes even more important, because you have to do life with these people, right? So how do you encourage people to lean into hard conversations? And then how do you, and this is a personal question, but it looked like Mike was like literally reading a counter under his computer that was like, how many days till the election? How many days till the election, right? And we're all living in this heightened sense of like the election, this many days. And if we don't leave it all on the field, if we don't get as many young people and people to vote as possible, then, will we regret it? So how do you foster dialogue on a community level? And then how do you take care of yourself while you're taking care of the world?
Wow, that question was loaded. I think that on a community level, caring for others is able to happen at like an easier level when it's at the local community level, which Black Girls Vote does. And I feel like you can really see someone's humanity better when you're in community with them. And I think that, I'm thinking as a young person who like scrolls on Twitter often, and I see a lot of lack of care, and I see a lot of, hatred and anger. And I wish that for like my generation, that we could kind of care for each other more, and that we could see each other's humanity. And I'm thinking like leading up to the election, we're living in some really chaotic times. And it can really get to you, and it can get to how you regard others. So I think that it's important that everyone looks to the side and sees the humanity of the person next to them. And I think that we also live in a very individualized society where it's really just easy for you to just be like, if I'm good, I'm good. So you really have to invest in the care of the collective, because if the collective isn't doing well, then individuals won't do well. You have to think beyond yourself. You have to also take time. I'm also thinking again as, Gen Z, you have to take time for introspection. We're not always going to be right. You have to take time to think about other people, think about things that might be affecting other people. And it'll help you, but also help others. And also, I think that something that I've learned is that you can't let, your actions be governed by your stances. And rather you have to let them be governed by your values. And you'll be able to connect based on your values, because if you decide that you value life, that's something that you can connect with someone else based on, even if you have a different stance on an issue. And also decide to act on your values even when it does not benefit you. So always thinking about others. So I think that that's what will help, to care for the collective, to care for the community. And also how I'm caring for myself. Oof, man. I think that I get energy from helping others and from thinking about others. Seeing the joy on the faces of others and seeing other people doing well is something that feeds into me. It's a cycle. It's basically what I was saying, where you can't be good on your own. You're good with your community.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for taking my off-the-cuff loaded question and answering so eloquently. And I think on the Gen Z perspective, I know you said that Gen Z is not always right, but I think I would speak on behalf of the three of us that have been doing this work for decades, is that like it's Gen Z that gives us hope. It's always been young people that have been leading social movements, and that will continue to follow you anywhere you will take us. At the foundation, we're very much built for and with young people. And so thank you for the work that you do. I also just want to mention the power of storytelling right now in breaking down barriers, disarming people, and having conversations. I think one of my favorite stories, and I had the pleasure of sitting on my mom's lap as she became an American citizen. And so voting was just like a really incredible family affair, and something that I never took for granted, because I got to watch my family struggle to become part of the process. And so I think that's one of the real things that gives me hope and gets me makes me feel even more impassioned in this work. I'd love to just end before we take a couple of questions. If there are any, please submit. We have a running list here, and I do see everybody who's asking for resources, and our team will absolutely follow up. So thank you so much for the folks that have asked. But I want to end the conversation on this theme of hope. So everybody's mentioned that things are not going as we expected, whether personally or professionally. There's uncertainty, there's fear, there's an urgent fight to dismantle systemic racism, there's climate change, there's so much happening. 2020 is really doing the most to all of us. And I'd love to just know where you find hope. We'll start with you, Andy. Like, where are you finding hope right now?
Well, throughout the pandemic, I can honestly say, for me personally, I've had a positive experience. And it started for the silliest reason at all, which was I hated commuting. I had a commute that was almost 2 hours long. And I was like, wait, I just get to do all this from home now? And it put a smile on my face. Then I thought about it, and I said, and as the quarantine started in real ways, I thought about people, the many people who are in domestic violence situations. And I thought about how awful this experience was for so many people. And I said, well, I'm going to always look to the positive and always be grateful, and not take it for granted, because I know that not everyone has that privilege. And then I think that for me, I kind of took that attitude as a leader, and I said to the headcount team, I said, this is going to be our best year ever. And it turned out it was. And I look at some of the things that have happened during this terrible time, that you actually have municipalities really looking at policing in a new way. You look at the fact that that the sports leagues are taking up these causes, and there's been this awakening among athletes about their role. These are incredible, historic things that had never, ever happened before. So out of hard times, you can always see the positives, and you kind of have to start with yourself. You have to look at what the positives are in your life and what you're radiating and what you're bringing to others, and hope that can set off a snowball effect. And I've found that during the pandemic, starting with recognizing that no matter what situation any of us are in, there's somebody in a situation that's far worse. And then you have to think about how to make your situation better and those around you.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. I have to share, my son is doing like a virtual soccer league because life. And they sent him jerseys, and he walked into the kitchen last week with his jersey, and he said, "Mom, can you put Black Lives Matter on my jerseys?" And I was like, "Yes, I can." And he got them embroidered, and that I think, from watching the sports players, like it made a difference. It makes a difference. It made a difference in my home, and so that was definitely something. I felt a little lighter and more hopeful that day when he asked that question. So thank you for mentioning that. Mike, what's giving you hope right now?
I start in the same place you did, Maya, of hope is looking at young people and all the great things they're doing. And one of the things that we think about here at YSA is looking at how many young people participate. And there's no one single measure of that, but even though those rates are at their highest levels ever, we're actually still leaving out 3/4 of young people kind of out of active, consistent, regular participation in different forms. And a lot of times that gets me down a little bit, because I think for all the work we've done, right, we've reached 1/4. But then when you flip that on its ear and think, okay, right, but if we can double, triple, quadruple that, and you think about the results that we've seen, just of 1/4, that you think if we can reach 50, 75, 100% of young people participating, wow, the change that could happen.
Absolutely.
And if all else fails, I eat dessert first.
I'm eating a ton of dessert, and I have no qualms about it. I think, I think in this moment, and always being unapologetic about your self-care, whatever you need to survive, whether it's in a pandemic or when things are absolutely rosy, taking care of yourself, whether that means dessert, whether that means a nap, whether that means anything else. Thank you for reminding us of that. Chia, let's end with you. Where are you finding hope right now?
Yeah, I feel like with my generation, we've been told that we're naive and over emotional, and I'm just so happy to see that those traits, those character qualities are coming in handy now. I'm just so astounded by like the fortitude and the resolve of so many young people right now, during a time that seems so hopeless, by young people, by queer people, by Black women, by Black Indigenous people of color during this time, just seeing all the resolve that they have and just all the passion that they have to stand up for, what they feel and what is right. I don't know what reserves we're reaching into, like where we're getting that strength from, but just to see it is just so empowering. And just to see that determination just gives me so much hope.
Thank you for sharing, and absolutely agree with that. So we have one question that we'll just do a quick round robin on, but our friend at In Kind Boxes asks if there's one website or page that they could share through their stories to get people to register to vote, what would it be? So let's go backwards. So Chia, Mike, and Andy, and please just remind people how to get in touch, what websites to follow, and one resource that's not your own that you want to shout out.
Oh, wow. Okay. So first off, go to blackgirlsvote.com, and actually you'll be able to find resources for how to sign up to vote there. Yeah, I'll say that.
Awesome. Thank you. Mike?
YSA.org/vote is our hub, and there's 50 different resources in voter registration, voter education, get out the vote, issue advocacy, and kind of youth voice in decision making. So there's tons of things there. I think the best, kind of most basic resource, Rock the Vote is always great. You know that well, Maya. And then vote.org is also just a basic one that will guide people through everything.
Awesome. Thank you. And Andy?
Thanks. Well, headcount.org, we're very proud of that. We have a lot of the tools from those organizations. We kind of take an approach of curating all the best tools from all the different organizations and then try to put a little bit of a fun spin on it all. So we invite people to come and check out headcount.org. And something that we've become involved with is Global Citizen, and they take a more like kind of content-rich approach to talking about each citizen's role in the world around us. Their mission is to eradicate extreme poverty, and the approach they're taking with really kind of storytelling, I think, is really admirable and very much worth checking out. So headcount.org and globalcitizen.org.
Absolutely. We love our friends at Global Citizen. And I'll just add in closing, we talked a lot about the connection between mental health and kindness. So if you're struggling, if someone you know is struggling, please visit the foundation's Get Help Now website. It's bornthisway.foundation. We'll drop the link. It's okay to not be okay. There's a community of support and resources, people that love you, and we just want you to stay. So please check out that website. And then also, if you're looking for some good news in the world, a corner of the kind internet, please check out channelkindness.org. This is one of my favorite programs, and it's particularly relevant this week as we launch the Channel Kindness book. It's available for pre-order now. It comes out on Tuesday, and we are so excited about it. So please take care of yourselves, stay healthy and safe. Thank you so much to Chia, to Mike, to Andy for the amazing work that all of you do. So fun to spend an afternoon with old friends and new friends talking about my favorite thing. And please, if you're not already registered to vote, please join me, become a voter. We need you. Your voice matters in elections and every day. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. And thank you, friends, for participating. Bye, everyone.